Good evening, boys and girls. Have you missed us? The Highbury squad is back live, and tonight we start off the week. It's Monday Madness with a very, very special guest. We have a legend in the house. Oh, that makes it two legends. Don't say we don't treat you. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad. Good evening, everyone. The squad is back. Welcome to the show once again. My podcast brother from another mother. Oh, how I've missed you. Super Kev, Super Kevin Campbell.
Squaddies! Sophie, I've got to say, I've missed you all. I can't wait for Monday Madness and a good week. And I'm excited because we got a legend on. Brilliant.
Yes, we have a total legend.
At ease.
That's how we greet them, Mr. Ray, and everyone needs to be on their best behaviour tonight. We have football royalty in the house, double downing on the football royalty tonight. Mr. Derek Ray, legendary commentator, and the voice, one of the voices of football for so many years. We are so excited to have you in the house. Welcome, Derek.
Well, thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Kev. I'm always a bit sheepish when I get an introduction like that, especially from somebody like Super Kevin Campbell, because, you know, when you were a young lad, as I was, as we all were, we were young once. Some people find that hard to believe. We sort of idolize footballers. So when you have big-name footballers calling commentators legends, we sort of think in our brains that there's something a little bit wrong. But it's great to be on with both of you. I know that there will be Arsenal themes throughout this hour, and I'm looking forward to that and anything else you have to throw my way.
Oh, we love that. Absolutely love it. Your dulcet tones, I tell you. Kev, I could just sit and picture so many games, so many moments. And Derek, I'm assuming, and my mother always taught me never to assume, however, is that you must have called some of Kev's games. Mm-hmm. Everton, maybe even with the European stuff, Trabzonspor. Have you? I'm sure.
Yes. If you think back to the 90s, and at that point, I'd actually moved to the USA. And what was happening in the USA at that stage was closed circuit TV was coming in. Remember closed circuit TV? To young people listening, they'll be saying, what is he on about?
What's that? Yeah.
What is that? But closed circuit TV was in the United States. This idea that, you know, a pub might have the rights to particular games and you'd pay sometimes quite handsomely for the privilege of watching these games. But of course, when Arsenal had their run all the way to the final of the Cup Winners' Cup, 1994. I was commentating on that for closed circuit TV, and of course, Everton years as well, and FA Cup games that I was the commentator for when, again, closed circuit TV was a thing in the United States. So, yeah,
Amazing.
but of course, I watched Kevin. You know, before I was even commentating professionally, Kevin was coming through the ranks. I'm a little bit older than Kevin, but not much. I look a lot older, I know that.
Absolutely love it. And I'm going to have to start on this one for both of you because the entire universe is talking about it. Derek, I'm pretty sure that after a game of commentary where you've always been honest, candid in the way you analyze and look at a match, neither you or one of your color commentators has been punched by a player who didn't appreciate what you had said. Pretty sure that hasn't happened to you, has it?
It hasn't happened to me, but you know what? I've actually been close to that happening a couple of times in Scotland, as you know from my accent, and if you know anything about me, I am from Scotland. And this happened, in fact, in the 1970s to a pretty well-known journalist who had written the wrong thing. And remember the name Billy McNeill, the late Billy McNeill,
yes,
who was the captain of Celtic and, you know, footballing great captain of Celtic when they won the European Cup in 1967. He was the Celtic manager at this point, and he essentially called this journalist to one side and said, "Could I have a quick word?" And basically chinned him, as we would say. And it also happened more recently to a broadcast journalist in Scotland, the late Jim McLean, in fact, during an interview. Jim McLean, who was the Dundee United manager. I don't know if you remember the incident.
Jim McLean, he's got a history.
Yeah, he's certainly got a history, and he didn't like what was asked of him. And I think his response was, "Don't offer me that ever again." Smack. And you could probably find it online. So yeah, I've not seen it myself, but I'm aware of it having happened. And yeah, we don't really condone that sort of thing, though.
Yeah, Kev, you've never pulled a Cantona, and you've never had that on the other side either. You've always been. In fact, you've never had a red card in your whole career, did you?
No.
That's insane.
Never. No, why is it insane?
Well, because I always find it really fascinating when a player hasn't been red carded when he played as long as you did.
And I still played physical. Mm-hmm. But you've got to know, being off the pitch, getting sent off, you are no good to your football club. You're no good to your team. How are you going to help your teammates if you're taking an early bath? No chance. No chance. So, for me, it was all about team. And once I got a yellow, then it didn't stop the physicality, but I always like to talk to the refs then.
Yes. As GD says, best ability is availability. Yeah, well,
very much.
All right, let's get stuck into things a little bit. So, Derek, it's quite an interesting season in the Premier League. We'll get your take on a little bit of Europe towards the end of the show. And of course, our Arsenal are exceeding expectations this season. I think if you ask most Arsenal fans, they would never have thought that we would finish top four. Of course, the dream is always to get back into Europe. What has been your take on the Mikel Arteta journey thus far? Are you impressed in terms of eighth, getting kicked out of Europe and now fighting for fourth place? What is your take from the inside of you, looking from the outsider perspective?
I'm quite intrigued because obviously I no longer cover the Premier League week in, week out. So I'm sort of glancing at it from afar. Obviously, the Bundesliga is my main week-to-week commitment along with La Liga. But what I think about Arsenal is that the story has almost sort of been changing with each passing month. It struck me maybe a year or so ago that everything seemed on a downer a little bit. But and there have been downers since then as well. But the future just seems a bit brighter to me. I mean, looking at it anyway, I think the English football scene has changed a bit. I mean, if we were to go back a few years, we always would have had Arsenal in the conversation, really in the top three. That hasn't been the case so much in recent years, with the rise, of course, of Manchester City, with the rise of Liverpool under Klopp, with Chelsea doing what Chelsea have been doing, whether that can continue, whether that's sustainable given what's happening at that particular club, that's a different story. But I think that people from the outside, certainly somebody like me, I sort of cheer on Arteta because I liked him so much as a player. He was the kind of player who was always very easy on the eye. And again, this is a bit simplistic, but you think from the outside that somebody like that is going to be a natural fit for a club like Arsenal as a coach, that his ideas naturally would translate. And I know there have been frustrations for Arsenal fans. I know that some of it has been quite difficult to go through. I think, be interested to get your perspectives on that because you're much closer to that than I am. But I do see that there's sort of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of where the club might be in a year or so. So that would be my sort of broad view. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, Kev did a special show on Friday where he talked about the evolution and the arc of Mikel Arteta and kind of where we've gone, where we've come to. I think one of the things for me is that he's had total support from the club, which makes a difference. Like when you see Manchester United kind of struggling the way they are, their hierarchy is an absolute mess. And we've seen that hierarchy can create a mess on the pitch as well. But Kev, it's always really interesting to see what people think about the Arsenal's evolution at the moment when they're not in it every single day the kind of same way we are.
Yeah, I think what Derek says is fantastic. Look, the key to all of this is looking at it from not the inside where we are as fans sometimes. It's looking at the big picture. The big picture is Arsenal were going in the wrong direction. With players that were happy just to pick up wages, etc. I don't think they were fully committed to the club, a lot of these players. Derek, you might agree, you might disagree. But for me, now that you see players are committed to the football club, all of a sudden there's a great feeling back at the football club. I think that's important. So, listen, it's really interesting what Derek says. And it's amazing how a lot of the Arsenal fans who were against the regime to start with have now come around. Why? Because of the eye test. What they're seeing, they like. So that makes a huge difference. So.
Yeah. And I think, Derek, I wanted to get your take on this because being a commentator, I wonder how you would have built that narrative at the end of the Aston Villa game when clearly that was a massive win for us. And it's these games against Villa, the game coming up against Palace, Brighton, Southampton, that we absolutely have to win because we've got Chelsea, West Ham, Manchester United, the North London derby coming up. And having been rock bottom at the start of the season, 0 points from 3 games, to where we are now, to having players that we can fall in love with again. As a commentator, what did you think of that moment? And did you think that we over-celebrated the 3 points? Do you think that's... I know Phil McNulty kind of stands up for us on this at the BBC, saying, since when has it been a crime to enjoy your team winning? What's your take on that? And as a commentator, how would you have captured that moment?
Well, I watched it after the fact, and I thought it was brilliant because, listen, we're all football fans. Doesn't matter who we support, doesn't matter what our background is. We all love the joy of the game. And I think as a commentator, you try to bring that out. You don't over-talk when it comes to the joy of the game. You try to let the pictures speak for themselves. And those pictures, frankly, spoke for themselves. And, that's what I love, whether I'm commentating or not. If I'm just watching a game as a casual fan, I love those pure, raw moments because they are what every fan goes through. And I think as a commentator, had I been putting words to those pictures, I simply would have said, Arsenal are breathing. Arsenal are living. Arsenal are pushing on to be the club that these fans, the Arsenal fans, want them to be and feel they can be. And I think it's the great thing about being a fan of any football club, and I see it in all countries, that it's not about whether you're first or second or third necessarily. It's about having that picture in your head as to what the club can be. And are they doing things that are in tune with what the fans feel the club should be? And I can give plenty of examples. Maybe we don't need to give the examples. You can use your imagination of clubs who are not in tune with what the fans think they should be. Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably fair to say that, for a while, and Kev touched on this, Arsenal were heading in a slightly different direction and maybe not a good direction. But the passion is there. You can see that, some things will go to plan, other things will not. I think that's obviously very clear. But there's excitement. And, because of the pandemic, I haven't been at the Emirates now for going on 3 years. But
wow.
It's got my, appetite ready for going back because I think that exciting things are happening. Again, that's my view from the outside.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. And one of the reasons I think, this year's taken on a different tone with Aaron Ramsdale and Benjamin White and the introduction of Tomiyasu, building on the Gabriels and the Thomas Parties of the world. And of course, Kieran Tierney previous to that, Derek. We have our good friend of the show, Mr. Stevie Nicol, who I know you've worked with many a time at ESPN. And Stevie... I think he heard the wrath of the Gooner Nation
He's gonna get it.
A few days, and he's actually on the show this Thursday.
I saw that.
Yeah, so of course, Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka really were the nucleus of the start of the falling back in love with our players again from a season ago, Derek. And I love Stevie to bits, and so does Kev. He's been on the show many times. He's an epic human. But those comments about Saka were a little harsh. I'm not quite sure where they came from and what your thoughts are on what Stevie said about Saka.
Well, obviously, Stevie is a fellow Scot and a pretty blunt fellow Scot. It doesn't mean that I agree with him on everything. You're far from it. But what I would say is that Stevie's a good pundit because he has an opinion and he understands that people who are watching that show, ESPN FC, want opinions, that they want to hear somebody who, and Kev knows because Kev played against him. Stevie was a hard-nosed professional, as tough as they come. And, he cares about Liverpool still, and that comes through in his comments. as much as you care, Kev, about Arsenal and the other clubs that you played for, Stevie wears that on his heart, and that comes through in his comments. And yeah, I don't necessarily agree with Stevie on that one either, but I will defend his right to have that opinion and to say it on TV. But now that I know he's coming on Thursday, and I did read that prior to this appearance tonight, then I'll definitely be tuning in.
Kev, all the squaddies are already like, he's done for. We've got Stevie who's going to go in dirty tackle style.
Yeah, listen, he's getting 2-footed straight away. But here's the funny thing, I'll get my first red card now. I think, Derek, the most important thing is really to analyse what he said, because I think that's the professional way. I know it's a podcast, but we're professionals. And, he made some comments about Saka that just weren't true. And at the end of the day, we're going to defend our player, but we're going to defend the truth, because Saka's been ever present. He's hardly ever injured. Yeah. He's just the nicest kid you could wish to have. There's nothing out there in the media about, he's doing bad stuff or anything like that. So, it's going to be interesting one to see. Maybe Steve might put the car in reverse a little bit.
we will watch with interest to find out.
He should stay on the golf course with Mr. Burley maybe on Thursday. All right, Derek. So I would like your opinion, because in terms of this crop of young British players that have come through, English players. You got Foden, Grealish, who's a little bit older now. You have Rashford and Sancho, United. You've got Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe, Benjamin White. Like, to see Arsenal players making the England squad again. I just wanted your take on the talent, though, of Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe. What's impressed you the most? I think also when you look at our squad, double question here, I would rather have our squad right now than Manchester United's. I mean, everyone would rather have City's, but I would rather have our team than Manchester United's right now, because those two players, I think, have helped build that backbone. What's your take on those two, and in particular what I'm asking regarding the comparison to the United squad?
Well, I think on young English players generally, there's been a big sea change, and I think you do have to give English football collectively the credit for understanding that the young players weren't coming through in large enough numbers, and they've done all sorts of things to address that. And I have to say as well, without getting into the realm of politics here, but I think politics and life are intertwined. I think that there was obviously a concerted effort to make sure that players of a minority background, if you want to put it that way, were coming much more to the fore. And I think that has gladdened the hearts of most people looking at England, because I look at the English team now, and again, I'm as a Scot, and notwithstanding any rivalries between Scots and English people when it comes to football, I do think that the England team that I see now, the national team, much more reflects the country of England than it used to. And I think everybody has to view that as a positive. But, the players you're talking about there, and Smith-Rowe, of course, had that little spell in Germany. I was very curious what was going to happen with him. And it didn't really happen for him there for a variety of reasons. But I think that this is sort of why, if I were an Arsenal fan and you asked me about Manchester United, I would probably be happier with what the Arsenal project is, for want of a better word, than what's happening at Manchester United. And I read Louis van Gaal's comments today, the manager of the Netherlands. I'm not sure if you've heard what he had to say about Manchester United. Kev's nodding. Louis van Gaal, who I think would be a great TV pundit, because he simply says whatever comes into his head, and it's often quite interesting. But he's talking about Erik ten Hag potentially becoming the manager of Manchester United, and saying that, well, his advice would be maybe don't go to Manchester United because they're a commercial club. Maybe he'd be better off going to a football club. Now, that, again, is a bit harsh, but it's Van Gaal for you. But I think there's some truth in that, that Manchester United is a different entity, and they have a huge rebuild job to do. Rangnick is the man who's charged with the task initially of trying to do it. We'll see what the long-term thinking is there. But with regard to Arsenal, I think with younger players, and again, getting fans enthused about what they're seeing. I think that is the way forward, and that's the way that the direction they're pointing everything towards at the moment.
Yeah. And Kev and I talk a lot, don't we, Kev, about this new crop of young players, comparing it a little bit to, and Derek will appreciate this, the Rockies and, you know, the Paul Davies of the world, and those players at Arsenal back in the day, which we often refer to, Derek, and we like to wax lyrical
Sophie,
about those times.
That was gonna be one of my questions for Derek, to be honest. Meeting. Does he have a Rocky story? Because, you know, he was such a fantastic guy, and he left such a mark on a lot of people. Did you have many dealings with Rocky at the time, Derek?
I didn't, unfortunately, just because of my geography. But I mean, obviously, well aware of other people's stories, and I'd like to hear your stories, to be honest. I mean, because you lived them, you know.
I've mentioned. I always talk about Rocky every chance I get, to be honest, because he epitomised everything that was Arsenal for me. Not only were we both South London boys, but he was just, you know, you cut him, and, you know, like the rock, a stick of rock, you break it, and it's got the name. Rocky had Arsenal in him, and the stuff he would do, going out of his way for players and parents of youngsters, etc. He was just a top man. But, you know, obviously, if you didn't really have that relationship over the years, obviously you know who he is. And, you know, the South London Brazilian used to get people off their seats, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's funny that you're saying it now, but as a commentator, we sort of look at things in a certain way, and we remember particular moments. And John Motson's voice actually comes to me when I think of David Rocastle, because again, I'm just imagining, you know, the goal that Rocky scored in which game was it? Now you'll be able to remind me. It was one of the important goals.
The game at Liverpool.
Probably the game at Liverpool. Would it have been the game at Liverpool? I can't remember. But just I remember Motson's voice, and there was that surprise in his voice. It was always David Rocastle. You know, it was. And that's all he needed to say. And I think it's a moment that will stay with fans of my generation. And I think I could probably listen for hours, Kev, just to you know, all the stories that you have and all the memories of by all accounts, a great guy.
Yeah, we have
Derek, one of my other questions would be, and maybe Sophie, you were going to ask the same question. What's it like working with Lee Dixon? Because Lee Dixon, you know, I'm sure Sophie was going to ask the same question. Obviously, the squaddies would love to hear what it's like and what he's like, because, you know, he's always been such a great guy and a bundle of fun.
Oh, well, yeah, I can definitely tell you some great stories of working in the studio with Dicko. And obviously I miss him because I haven't seen him for a while. But, yeah, just a really funny guy, you know, just a really naturally quick-witted guy. He's always got a quip for you. He's always ready with a lighter moment. In our sessions when, you know, sometimes when we're recording and working on the game, which obviously is how I know him most of all, it can be quite intense. You know, we're doing it for hours and hours, and he'll be able to kind of just lighten the mood with one little comment. And sometimes we would use those comments actually on the video game as well. Sometimes not by design, but we would sort of have a little go at each other. He would usually start it, and I'd have to come up with a riposte. But no, I mean, and the team really enjoyed working with him because he had that quick wit, that sort of Mancunian sense of humor, and yeah, just a great guy. And of course, a big hit with American fans on NBC, because he's been part and parcel of that from the very start, since NBC took over the Premier League rights. And it would be hard to imagine NBC coverage, I think, in the USA without Lee Dixon. But I can only imagine what he was like in the dressing room. I'm visualizing somebody who was probably a bit of a practical joker. Would that be right?
Yeah. Yep, you're bang on. You're spot on, Derek. You're spot on. But, you know, he was another one of those glue guys.
Yeah, he's and I agree with Derek on the NBC coverage front. That whole crew Rebecca, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago. Robbie Earl's coming on in the next week or so. They're all. Robbie Mustoe, even Timmy Howard, who I know that you've covered with the US men's national team as well. Derek and MLS here and stuff. They're just a great crew, and I would hate to see them lose any type of rights for the Premier League in the US for sure.
And they have the rights for a good number of years going forward. Well, one thing I do remember about Lee early on in our session, and I was well aware, I was sort of maybe partially responsible for this. I was well aware that Lee liked to sort of have a little dig at goalkeepers. He saw goalkeepers as kind of a second-class citizens compared to outfield players. So, we were doing this little sequence where we were talking about the goalkeeper, having made a mistake, and then the goalkeeper making spectacular saves. So, I think I teed it up for him. I said, what a save by the goalkeeper, fantastically. And so I sort of said, what kind of marks would you give him? 10 out of 10? And I knew what was coming next. He said, yeah, it was a pretty good save. I'll give him a 7. I'll give him a 7. That's about as much as a goalkeeper is ever going to get with Lee.
I absolutely love it when he does the curmudgeon thing. It's just the best thing in the world. Like you could, Arlo and you could set him up and he'll be like, really? It's so awesome. I absolutely love that about him. Ran into him and Righty at the World Cup in Moscow, and I mean the two of them together. You can imagine when all these guys get together, Derek. It's just too much fun, and Roy Keane was there too. So it's always a good moment when you've got Arsenal and Spurs and Arsenal and Manchester United players in the same room.
The funny thing is, I was going to say, Sophie, that when I lived in London till 2017 for almost a decade, and we actually lived around the corner from each other. We lived in the same part of southwest London, and so I used to see him all the time. Just walking around the area. And little did I think we were going to be working together on the video game, but we worked together on that, and also with NBC a few times too.
He loves to ride his bike. It's amazing how lean he and Kevin, the two of them, honestly, they get younger every time I see them. It's like they're Benjamin Button. Zlatan, thought he's Benjamin Button, but I actually think Super Kev and Lee Dixon are Benjamin Button. Right, before we go on to some other bits and bobs, I have to get this take from you as a Scot, of course, on our Braveheart, our Tesco carrying bag himself, Mr. Kieran Tierney. There's a lot of stuff brewing, and I don't know where it's coming from lately, that Real Madrid are interested in him, and obviously it's great that other teams are interested in our players. To me, he seems like he's going to be an Arsenal player for a very long time. You've seen him play a lot. Of course, we know of what he was for Celtic. He's shining for Scotland right now. You must be stoked with the evolution of the national team. Talk to us about Kieran Tierney, Derek, and what you think he means not only to the Scots, but also to us Arsenal fans.
Well, what I can say about KT, and I sort of know him as KT because when I was working for BT Sport and covering Scottish football, one of the great things was we had really good access to the players. So it was a bit like the old days when Kev was playing. In those days, the commentators and the players kind of had a bit of a bond because you would see each other in the tunnel area, sometimes at training sessions. That sort of changed a bit, in the modern era. But in Scotland, it didn't really change so much. So as he was coming through, all the coaches at Celtic were telling me, we've got this young player, Kieran Tierney, look out for him. And I shook his hand when he was just a very young player, might have been his second or third appearance, and he'd only just started with Celtic. You could see early on that this was an unusually good talent, for Scottish football at that particular period. We hadn't really been bringing through players of that caliber. And it was just a matter of, where he would end up. Obviously, he was a big Celtic guy and, remains a big Celtic guy. And Arsenal, a great club for him to go to. So I think that he's that kind of personality. He's not the sort of personality that you can imagine saying, right, I'm going to have 2 years here, 2 years there. I'm going to change clubs here. I think there is a bit of loyalty in his core. And I think he's very proud to be an Arsenal player. I think that means something special to him. I think football-wise, as a Scot, we're a bit unlucky because we have two players in Andrew Robertson and Kieran Tierney on that left-hand side who, are both high caliber. I think most national teams in the world, if they had those two, would think, yeah, that's pretty good, but we don't really have comparable players on the right-hand side, so we struggle a bit over there. But his leadership really comes through. And I remember, and I, was disappointed at the time, because when I left the UK to move back to the USA in 2017, the last game I attended as a fan was the Celtic Aberdeen Scottish Cup final at Hampden. And you may know the story that he got injured early on in that game, Kieran. He had to be taken to hospital and have emergency dental surgery performed on him. And he made it back despite that. I think probably against doctor's orders. He made it back so he could lift the trophy. So right at the end of the game, he turns up again and is there, looking a bit punch drunk, but lifting the trophy. And it tells you everything about the guy. And so I follow him with special interest. And there's just something, and I've no proof of this, I've no inside knowledge. There's something that makes me think that he's the kind of loyal player who'll be there for a bit longer. I hope so, anyway.
I think you agree with that, don't you, Kev?
Yeah, future captain as well, Derek. He's got the armband when Lacazette goes off. The armband gets passed to Kieran Tierney now. So, look, I know all the speculation, but Derek, I can't see Kieran Tierney leaving, no matter what they pay. I mean, if they're going to pay ridiculous money, then maybe we might look at it, but I think he's going to be a future captain of Arsenal.
I just think you can't start ripping out the heart that has been built at this point, because I think we take 2 or 3 steps back again. The whole point is to try and keep this squad together, very much the way, even though thankfully they didn't win anything, but it's a good comparison, the way Pochettino kept that Tottenham team together for quite some time. Yes, they underachieved, but they evolved season on season. Sorry, squaddies. As a terrible example, I know. I apologise right now, and I'll wash my mouth out with vinegar a little bit later.
They didn't underachieve, so they overachieved.
They overachieved, getting to the Champions League final and stuff like that. All right, almost 300 of you in live chat. It would be rude not to hit the like button when we have a legendary commentator in the house, a legendary player. Come on, people. You know what to do. Please.
All right. Go on.
Before we get on to some FIFA fun stuff, because they're driving me nuts in chat. Derek, they're going crazy. And some people are actually just turning the screen off and listening to your dulcet tones, because they're like, it's like you're a lullaby, basically.
It's not lost on me that the game is really iconic, and for a lot of younger people especially, it's their childhood. And I've only been part of it since FIFA 19 was my first edition as a commentator on the game, and I've been there ever since. But if you're of a certain age, and we're all too old for it, really. In terms of playing the game, or playing the game well, I imagine. But for younger people, football means FIFA.
Well, seeing as we're on it right now, we may as well stick to it. Do you, the one question they all have, and you probably get this a gazillion times, I'm like, no, I'm not asking that. They're like, you have to. Do you play the game?
I play it really badly, and I mean really shockingly badly. If you saw how badly I play the game, you would think, what is wrong with this guy? What I actually do instead is, I didn't have a console, prior to being involved as the commentator, so I thought I'd better buy one. And I did, but I realized early on I was so bad, it was actually much more productive going online and watching good players play the game. And I wanted to do that because what I wanted to do was figure out, based on the game, what could I do with the commentary that would improve it, So that's my reason for watching it. Sometimes I'll just go online, and maybe you at home, maybe it's your game I'm watching and you don't even know. I'm eavesdropping on a live game somewhere, and I'm listening to how the commentary is being used. And obviously, as a production team, we're all very interested in that and just trying to make it better year in, year out. Because contrary to what some people think, I'm not actually in the living room commentating on the game at that particular moment, although that would be a wonderful technological advance.
That's amazing. I thought this was funny. Jamal goes, why am I always offside, Derek?
Sorry, Jamal. Sorry, Jamal. And I hope when you're offside that the commentators don't give you too much of a hard time. That's all I can say.
And then just one more on this real quick, because let's see. AFC Max has put this in a couple of times. Can you please ask Derek to the FIFA intro for Arsenal against Tottenham at the Emirates, please? I love his voice. We're not going to ask him to do that, but thank you, AFC.
I don't mind. I don't
Go
mind.
on. Okay. Why not?
Well,
Just for AFC Max.
Okay, so we usually say something like this. Hello, it's a massive day here in North London, and a warm welcome to our coverage of the Premier League. My name's Derek Ray, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us on this spectacular occasion. It's the North London derby. It's Arsenal taking on Tottenham. There you go. That's how we usually do it.
We're not worthy. We're not
Clip
worthy.
clip it, guys. Clip it and keep it. Brilliant, Derek.
Oh, you just made his day. Thank you so much, Derek. Awesome. Well, speaking of Arsenal and Tottenham, Derek, how is that top four going to end up? Is it going to be us? Is it going to be Manchester United? Is it going to be Spurs? How do you see this playing out? We all have to play each other. We're 4 points clear of the Red Devils, 3 points clear of our nemesis right now. There's a long way to go yet, but yet there's only a few, there's no room for mistakes. How do you see this unfolding?
I see a lot of points being spilled by everyone. I think that's the reality of it. I think it's going to be nip and tuck, to use that phrase. I think it's going to go right to the very end. But I think, as we've been discussing, I think there is hope if you're an Arsenal fan. And I don't think that there's any reason to fear the situation or to fear the other teams in that sector of the table. I think Arsenal can hold their own. And I will not be surprised, not just because I'm on with you two, I will not be surprised if it's Arsenal ahead of the others.
That'll
Kev.
do, Derek. That will do.
Should we just end the show?
Can I come back after all this?
Yeah.
I can come back.
Derek, you know what? Sophie, if you remember, we done a show and we were talking about Arsenal. I think it was Kev says Arsenal should Arsenal have any fear? They should have no fear against anybody. Arsenal have played all the teams. They know what's up in front of them. And now we're down to 10 games left. Derek, I've agreed with you. I'm sure Sophie agrees with you. Do you know what? We'll take it going down to the wire and getting in. We'll take that.
Yeah.
Where can you see if there's a slip up? For us, it's always been that our squad is still thin, Derek. And, you know, when you look at our bench in some of these games, you're like, wow, there's a few youngsters that have been brought into the fold. In terms of game changers, I do believe that we have them, but of course they're not game changers on the level of a Ronaldo who can score a hat-trick in a game, or a Harry Kane or a Son. If there's going to be a hiccup, which of the games do you think? Because we're playing United, which is a revenge game for us because we never felt we should have lost that game at Old Trafford, to be honest with you. We were way too conservative. We should have gone in for the kill. Chelsea's a team we've had a lot of joy over since Mourinho has left. Where can you see, which are the games? You mentioned like you can see spillage, but...
Yeah, well, I think this is where the Premier League is so unpredictable when it comes to these games. I would think, I sort of go along with what you're saying about Chelsea, that for whatever reason, and maybe this is not logical football-wise, but I do think that Chelsea are going to be affected by what is happening around them. I think that's only natural. And, of course, they're involved also in the Champions League still. So I wouldn't be so worried about that. I think the Manchester United games always have their own dynamic. Even now, even when, if you look at that rivalry of old, Manchester United and Arsenal, that used to be, it was the foremost game in English football for a long time, hasn't been for a while. But I think that one has the potential for spillage, but it'll depend. And you can tell me exactly where that comes in the line of fixtures. I'm not certain myself when that is between now and the end of the season. But I think that Chelsea wouldn't worry me so much as the Manchester United game, even though that, may be illogical to some.
Yeah, the United game is on April 23rd. We've got Chelsea on the 20th. That's the game that they squeezed in. We got West Ham on the 1st, so it gets tricky for us for sure.
So,
Kev,
it gets tricky for us a week today. Crystal Palace. You saw what they done with Man City. Let's not overlook them. I think Demsek put it up. That's a potential banana skin. The problem with the Premier League, Derek, is
Oh.
every team is a potential banana
It is,
at times.
and that and I was restricting my comments to those games against direct rivals. But you're absolutely right, Kev, that sometimes a game against a team fourth from bottom, fighting for its life, that can carry with it more difficulties than the Chelseas and the Manchester United. So I think at this point it's very hard to predict. That's why I'm saying I think there will be points dropped by everyone. And as a neutral, I'm hoping it goes down to the very end. And I think there's a fair chance it will.
Yeah, there's a reason why they haven't scheduled that North London derby game yet, Derek. Kev and I have been saying it for weeks now.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get your take on these two. Who wins the league, Liverpool or City?
I still say City. I know that there's probably a groundswell now thinking that, okay, if Liverpool have managed to peg this back the way they have, then they stands to reason they have a good chance. I don't know. There's a kind of a certain drumbeat with City that I think, an even keel about City, that makes me think, yeah, they probably will do it. But what I will say is I think the Champions League can, of course, influence this as well, depending on what happens to the two clubs in the Champions League, who goes furthest. Do they both go as far as possible? I mean, that's certainly something that is thinkable, conceivable as well. But I'm going to default to City. How about you guys? What do you think?
I think Liverpool are going to nick it. I know Kev doesn't want Liverpool to win, that's for sure. And he's worried about what's going on at the other end of the table as well, which we're going to get your take on too. But I have a feeling Liverpool are going to do it.
They've got a lot of momentum, haven't they?
They do.
They've got a lot of momentum. But I think it's going to come down to that game at the Etihad.
Yeah.
And City, I fancy City. I still fancy them to pull it out the bag in the end. But you know what? I think they're gonna cancel each other out because they play in the FA Cup semi-final as well. So, and then there's both in the Champions League. You know, this could be some epic games.
I love
Could
it.
be. Yeah.
Derek, do you think the team Kev captained and saved from relegation all those years ago, did they make it? Are they going to survive?
They are going to survive. I'm saying that with some confidence. Well, maybe not with 100% confidence, but it would be unthinkable for Everton not to survive. I can't. I mean, none of us. We can't visualize Everton in the second tier of English football, can we? I mean, it's just something that is not meant to happen. I think again, twists and turns in that sector of the table, and we've seen what Leeds United have done in the last couple of matches under Jesse Marsh when they'd sort of been written off. But there's. Again, I'm going with a sort of a gut instinct on this one, and a long way to go, but I just cannot imagine Everton going down.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, you don't want to have a Forest Leeds moment, right?
No.
I mean, especially Forest from back in the day. That would be a real shame. And I think it would be great for teams like Leeds and Everton to stay up. I really do. Just the atmosphere at the games, the history. And I don't mean that to sound derogatory to, any other team. But Norwich are a yo-yo team. Burnley have kind of been surviving by the seat of their pants for a while. Watford are another yo-yo team. So it'd be great to see. Now, you watch a lot of Bundesliga. You commentate on top games, Derek. I love watching Bundesliga. Kev does too. I wanted to ask you this. We need strengthening. Super Kev says we need 8 players, which we know we're not going to get in the summer transfer window. We need a couple strikers. We need a right back cover. We need a CB. We need probably two midfielders, right?
Yeah.
When you see talent, other than Jude Bellingham and Haaland, who we'd take in a heartbeat.
yeah, of course.
Who do you see out there that you think when you kind of sit back and you think, they'd fit in perfectly at the Arsenal?
Oh, well, I mean, I think when we talk nowadays about young players in the Bundesliga, there are many who would be good fits for top Premier League clubs. And the fact is, there are many who see themselves eventually playing in the Premier League. Some who would like to make it happen immediately. The best young defender in the Bundesliga, but I don't unfortunately think Arsenal are really going to be in the running for him, is a guy called Nico Schlotterbeck, who plays for Freiburg. and actually just made his debut for Germany at the weekend. And just a superbly talented young central defender. And he is certainly the player who the big clubs, Bayern are trying to, would certainly be quite happy to have him on board. Dortmund would like to have him. But there would be one, who I think, I think the sky's the limit for him. And I think we'll be talking about him as a very high level player and possibly in the Premier League someday. But I'm not sure the timing is right for Arsenal at the moment. If you're looking at top strikers, and again, this is somebody who has attracted the attention of the top clubs in Europe, and we saw him at the Euros last year. Patrik Schick, the Czech Republic international striker, joint top scorer at the Euros, plays for Leverkusen, is injured at the moment, but he's second in the league in terms of goals scored behind Robert Lewandowski. And Leverkusen have some really good talent. I would say to anybody in England or any Arsenal fan around the world, if you want to look at talent that's out there, look at Bayer Leverkusen. And what they've done is they've used a very good scouting network put together by Simon Rolfes, their sporting director. And they seem to manage to get young players at 18, 19. One of them who PSG mistakenly didn't hold on to, a guy called Moussa Diaby, who now plays for France, and little dribbler, naturally left-footed, goal scorer. And now they're looking at around 100 million euro of maybe the asking price. So this is the difficulty is kind of, who do you look at who's realistic, for Arsenal within certain parameters, and knowing too that other top clubs in Europe are on that scent. But it certainly is the case that, and I know this having spoken to recruitment people at Premier League clubs, the Bundesliga is very much on the radar of English clubs. And you're not going to get bargains from the Bundesliga, because the fact of the matter is that the Bundesliga clubs know that there's a price for a player, and then there's a Premier League price, because the money is there in the Premier League.
It's a premium.
Yeah, that's right. It is a premium, Kev. But those would be a couple of names, young players and slightly older players. But I would say look at Leverkusen for talent up and down that team. There's a young defender they've got called Piero Incapié from Ecuador, who they just signed at the start of the season. Another one who I think is going to end up being a very high-level defender. He's only, 19 at the moment.
A quick one for you from Barry. So many questions, you guys. Keep them coming in. We'll spend 5 minutes on your questions for Derek. What does Derek think of Sosa at Stuttgart?
Borna Sosa, Croatian, who is a left-sided player, probably one of the top 2 or 3 crossers of the ball in the Bundesliga. And it's interesting, his crosses tend to be sort of high trajectory. It's not driven balls in from the left, it's higher trajectory. And they have a tall striker, Zasha Kalajic, who's often the recipient of those crosses. But he's another one who Stuttgart will do well to hang on to, and could imagine him doing really well anywhere, either as a left wing back or as a left back in a back four. But yeah, we'd be talking big-ish money for Borna Sosa.
Kev, I would love to get Derek's take, because he's seen him play a lot. A player who I think, maybe didn't have enough mustard for the Arsenal, but it's good to see him doing well in Bundesliga, but I feel like we've given him away for pittance, is Dinos Mavropanos. How have you seen him this season?
He's been good with Stuttgart, and I think you have to say that was a bit of a masterstroke by their sporting director, who you will remember quite well, Sven Mislintat, who of course was at Arsenal and didn't stay there that long. But he's done a good job there at Stuttgart. The sporting director in Germany is quite an important position, more high profile than in England. And Mislintat has had to work kind of on a budget, bringing players in and then selling them on. But Mavropanos was the reason I say a masterstroke was that he managed to get this deal whereby they'll get him automatically on a buy option for €3 million if they stay up. Now, it's touch and go whether Stuttgart will stay up at the moment. But even if they get relegated, they still have that option to buy him for $3 million. So it's automatic if they stay up, and it's optional on their part if they go down. So Whether he's good enough to be an Arsenal regular, I'm not sure. But he's, for the most part, been very good with Stuttgart, playing on the right-hand side a lot of the time of a back three, commanding. Also, when he scores goals, his goals seem to be spectacular goals. You know, he'll drive it from outside the box and it'll go sailing into the top corner of the net, or it's a powerful header from 14 yards out or something. But I talked to a lot of Stuttgart fans, and they're very grateful to have him. I know that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he is talented. But the problem we've got, Derek, as you well know, is we've invested a lot of money in William Saliba.
Correct.
And he's now a full French international. And, he's the next big thing defensively for France. So
I watched him the other day there. I was commentating on France against Cote d'Ivoire, against Ivory Coast on Friday. And so he made his appearance, and Pepe played pretty well in that game too, by the way, for Ivory Coast.
He did. And also, then Derek, what did you think of the young midfielder from Monaco, who?
Chouameni.
Yes.
Really good box-to-box performance. Involved constantly. Played alongside Pogba, and kind of provided Pogba with the platform that maybe Pogba needs to have a player sort of doing the harder work, and of course ended up scoring the winner, the goal right at the end, 92nd minute. It was impressive. I've
been keeping my eye on him lately, and he just seems like an Arsenal type of player. Another question for you from everyone is about Leno, and if there's interest from German teams. Of course, you're a commentator, not a journalist in the sense of transfers, but it seems like that's the place he wants to go back to. What's your thoughts on Leno and who he could potentially attract? How much do you think we could get for him?
Well, it's an interesting one because obviously he's been there for a while now at Arsenal, and he was at Leverkusen, and he's still highly thought of. But I would say one thing Germany does pretty well is produce goalkeepers. So you always have this sort of conveyor belt of younger goalkeepers coming through. I'm not really sure I can visualize at the moment, and I certainly haven't seen him linked with any particular German club. I can't really visualize one club that would say, yeah, we absolutely want to get Bernd Leno back into Germany. I think it would, because if you look at the big clubs there, they're all fairly well off. Leverkusen are one who maybe could upgrade, but they're being linked with a very good goalkeeper from Bielefeld, Stefan Ortega. Whether that will happen, we shall see. So I think it's one to watch more than anything. But I'm not aware of one German club putting all their eggs in the Leno basket. As good as he is, and as credible as he's viewed in Germany. Yeah.
Kev, Derek, here's one for you, a warning in case you are commentating on the Dortmund-Leipzig game. If there's a pitch invasion at the 76th minute, it's Magic Mike from the Gooners podcast. So just know that's coming in advance.
I know Magic Mike, and I'm not actually commentating on that game, so I don't have to worry about it.
Okay, one of the other popular questions that's coming in is, who are the current commentators that you enjoy?
Well, I mean, that's always a difficult question because many of them are my friends and colleagues, of course. And, I don't want to leave anybody out, but maybe I'll sort of put it this way. My best friend in the commentary business is Ian Darke. And Ian and I used to be, and Ian just has a wonderfully idiosyncratic way about him. And we used to play golf together once a week when I lived in London, and I miss him dearly. So obviously Ian is somebody I'm certainly going to mention. I think fans around the world know how great Peter Drury is. I think they know that he has this sense of occasion, and as a wordsmith, really, nobody should try to compete with Peter, because he is in a league of his own when it comes to that sort of thing. And you could go down the list. The commentator who influenced me on TV most of all was an English commentator, Brian Moore, back in the 1970s and 80s. And
it's up for grabs now.
I know. And of course, he's inextricably linked with that iconic line from the Liverpool-Arsenal game. But he just had sometimes it just comes down to not the words somebody uses, but just the way that they use their voice. And Brian Moore, who I have to say as well was a real gent. I made myself known to him when I was a young commentator, and he was the essence of of charm. He couldn't help me enough. And so I used to communicate with him a little bit. And I mentioned John Motson earlier, and of course, Barry Davis of that era, the two BBC commentators. But I think what's great now is you have a lot of younger commentators coming through who've been given an opportunity at a young age. So I dare say in 10 years' time, there'll be a commentator currently at 22, 23, just making his way or her way, because there's some very good women who are broadcasting at a high level now as well. But that commentator in 10 years' time will be elevated to the status of the Moores, the Motsons, and the Barry Davises.
Super Kev.
I actually
those
work
guys.
with. Hey, them guys are, listen, with Desi's our staple diet, them guys. But I actually work with Ian Dart, Derek, for Mola.
Oh, yes.
Sophie, when I do Mola TV, that's Ian Dark is one of the guys I work with in studio and obviously commentary. So what a great guy, and a massive gooner as well. Massive. He's
just a terrific bloke, and still working very hard for ESPN, for BT Sport, and sometimes on the Premier League World Feed.
Yeah, love that. Who's the best colour commentator you've worked with?
Again, that's an even harder one, because somebody asked me recently, how many co-commentators do you think you've worked with? And I started trying to sort of write some names down, and I was well past the 150 mark. And I was thinking, there's still people I've missed out, So on that one, I think it's sort of, depends on your preference. And some people will like a certain style over, another person. One person who I'll single out, because when I moved back to the UK, I worked a lot with Craig Burley, and I know that, again, Craig is one of these people who's a bit polarizing. Some people will say, oh yeah, I like his strong opinions. Others will say, no, he goes over the top too much. But I found that Craig was somebody who was just great to work with, somebody who was really in tune with what a broadcast should be, and made his criticisms fairly. He was a fair judge of what he saw. But I've worked from everyone from Andy Gray to Lee Dixon to Stuart Robson on the game nowadays. To tell you who I really had a good time working with, and I don't know if he's ever been a guest on your podcast, but I think he'd be a good guest, is Efan Okoku, who was my partner during the Euros, and in fact during World Cups gone by for ESPN as well. And Efan is very matter of fact, but I think a really good eye for the game, a nice way about him. And a lot of people have said to me, for some reason, you two seem to really, your voices
connect. You connect,
well. And that's an intangible. It's a bit like, Kev, a striker playing with another striker, a centre half with another striker. Sometimes you just have that intuitive kind of understanding, and I've always felt that with Efan.
Yeah.
Two questions. I love this stuff, Kev. And Derek, when I said to Derek, how much time do we have? He said, I'm good. And I'm like, don't ever say that to me, because I'll keep you here all night.
You'll be Sophie time.
Yeah. Because I love it because Kev's doing a lot more commentary now too, for international and also for TalkSport and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've heard
and I always ask him as well, like, what's your favorite game that you've called, the magic moment, and the game that you wish that you could have called, and what you would have said?
Right. Well, I'm quite lucky, because I was at the microphone for what I think will go down as the greatest European final of all time. Certainly in my lifetime, I'll be surprised if it's ever topped. And that was in Istanbul, 2005, Milan against Liverpool, and as a commentator, you can't go wrong with that. The material was just incredible. And we always say, well, you couldn't write the script. You couldn't really have written that one. 3-0 to Milan after 40-odd minutes. And I freely admit I was already looking at my notes, trying to make sure I had in my head what the record margin of victory was in a European final, because it did appear it could go that way. But then, of course, to produce that comeback, that Liverpool comeback, didn't really matter who you supported. That is something as a football fan, if you watch that, if you were around to watch that, then you probably would say, yeah, that's the best European final ever.
That was insane. That was, to be a fan in that moment. I know. I wish we could have had that in Paris. I mean,
I was there in Paris the following year, of course, for that final against Barcelona. And yeah, I mean, we're all left to wonder what would have happened had it been 11 against 11. We'll never know, will we? But they put up a pretty good fight despite that.
The game that you wish you could have called.
The game I wish I could have called, and this again is sort of the German football aficionado in me. The 1974 World Cup final, and I say that because I was 7 at the time. It's the first World Cup that I watched, and I watched every minute of that World Cup. My dad could tell you, watched every minute of that World Cup, and I would love to just have been at the microphone for one of my heroes, Gerd Müller, who sadly passed away recently, for that goal, because it wasn't a classic goal at all. If you watch it back, it was a typical Müller goal, though. Just sort of swiveled around, and wasn't even great contact that he made with the ball, but he had that. And I'm talking to a former, to a master craftsman as strikers go. Kev, you will have apprecited it.
He had the know-how, didn't he? He had the know-how in the box. Yeah,
he had the knack. And what would I have said? It's always hard to know what you would have said unless you were actually in the moment at that particular time. But I probably would have said something like, Gerd Müller, and why should we be at all surprised? So typical of the man. And West Germany have the lead, something like that.
Yeah.
I hopefully would have done it more justice than that.
Those players during that time. One of my favorite interviews I've ever done. I can't even believe that I had the opportunity to talk to him, to be honest, with Carlos Alberto.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you bring up Gerd Müller. Kev and I talk about the old players all the time. One of our favorite shows is when we kind of take a trip down memory lane, and we get players inside the dressing room for another show, and we just kind of go back and look at these incredible moments of history, and how you can equate things and experiences in your life to the games and those moments that you experienced. As a fan. Oh, by the way, there's a few of our US audience asking if you worked on the 94 World Cup, and also Universal Greek, one of our regulars here. Did you call the 94 World Cup, Derek?
No, but I have a story about the 94 World Cup because I actually wasn't broadcasting in that World Cup. I was an official for the organizing committee at that World Cup. So I had moved I'd been working for the BBC for 5 years. I left in 1991, moved to the USA as a freelance journalist broadcaster, didn't know what my prospects were at all. I was young and reckless, as we all were at that time. And I got a job offer to be the press officer in one of the venues for the World Cup. And it was in the Boston venue. And then went all the way to the final to work with the organizing committee. So I saw a lot of football. I saw a lot of the inside, because when you're a press officer, you see things that you never see as a broadcaster or a journalist. So I was very close to what was happening in the venues with FIFA, obviously, and with some of the players. So I can tell you a lot about that World Cup, but not as a broadcaster. It's great fun.
Oh, it is gold, GD. Absolutely. Everyone's really enjoying this, Kev. I mean,
I'm not surprised. We've got a legend.
What do you have anything up your sleeve that we haven't asked that you'd like to ask Derek, Super Kev?
Well, I think I've asked Derek quite a few questions. I mean, for me, just what is the highlight of your career? Because maybe you haven't hit the highlight yet, Derek, because you're still going. But up to this date, what is the highlight of your career? Because maybe you've met somebody who you'd always wanted to meet.
I mean, that is a really interesting way to look at it, because as a commentator, you are lucky to get to meet people who are legends, footballing legends. And when I think about it, I mean, and I didn't appreciate this so much at the time. I mean, I grew up watching people like Dennis Law, but I've worked with Dennis Law on the air as well, and I sometimes have to sort of pinch myself to believe that, because I think the football heroes who you have when you're really young, they are the ones who you always keep on that pedestal. And, another one who was a great hero of mine was Beckenbauer. And I thought to myself, this guy just oozes class, watching him on the pitch. I'm thinking, nobody does it like him. And I remember one day in 2008, I was assigned to this gig for ESPN, which involved basically sitting in a hotel room, interviewing Beckenbauer for an hour about his football memories. And I'm thinking to myself, you're back. You're the little boy in Aberdeen again here, aren't you? Because this is, this is something that you couldn't possibly have imagined. You're getting to sit here and listen to this guy telling you all about his memories of playing in the World Cup that you remember watching in 1974. So things like that. But I think the highlights would be the World Cups, because I think the World Cups do stand on their own. And I've been lucky enough. We mentioned 94 when I was one of the organizers. Every other World Cup, I've been a broadcaster from 1990 on.
Wow.
And I'll be keeping my run going later this year in Qatar. So I think the World Cups really do stand alone because, and it's one of the reasons, to be honest, why I really hope we don't ever move away from the 4-year cycle. Because what I love is that we can all remember 74 in my case, the first one, 78, 82. No matter when you were born, you can remember the 4-year cycle and you remember the games. If we suddenly had that every 2 years, I'm not convinced it would have the same meaning. You know, I think it would become, oh yeah, another World Cup, and oh yeah, and England are sending a B team this year, and we would say that without any irony. You know, we would say, yeah, they're prioritizing something else, and I don't ever want us to get to the stage where that joy in sharing this world experience ever disappears.
I completely agree with you 100% on that. The excitement is the wait, and then you've got the Euro sandwiched in between.
Exactly.
It's just beautiful. Okay, 1 minute, get you out on these two. Messi or Ronaldo has come up in the chat box. Who is it for you?
Messi.
All right. Done and done. And I'm assuming Beckenbauer, Müller, your favorite players of all time, but who is your ultimate favorite player of all time as a fan?
Well, those two, but then the other one I would have to say, the great Johan Cruyff for me. And again, a product of my generation, 1974, that World Cup. Nobody ever did it better to me. I mean, you can mention Maradona likewise. And I suppose, you know, we are sort of the Maradona generation, aren't we? But I'd have to say the great Dutchman would be in that conversation.
Amazing.
For me as well.
Okay, and who wins the World Cup later this year?
Ooh, that is a really interesting question, and I might give you a different answer come the end of the year. This is probably going to surprise you a little bit. Germany.
Whoa. Whoa.
I'll take that bet.
You can never rule them out, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure, but I'll take that bet.
I just think they're building something interesting, and I think it's they've started really well under Hansi Flick. I know, you know, not playing the level of opposition they will at the World Cup, but that's where I'm going on this one.
All right. Okay. Do you have a dark horse that we should be keeping our ear out for?
Dark horse. Don't underestimate Switzerland. I think they are, and obviously you saw them play against England at the weekend. I think they're a really good, well-organized, able team with some excellent individuals. And who else would I add to that one? Dark horse.
Wait, Mr. Derek Ray, are you saying there could be a world we live in where Xhaka could lift the World Cup?
Well, I'm not going that far. I'm not saying that. I'm not predicting that. But
when you put it like that, Soph, no. Please, no.
I love it. Absolutely brilliant. Oh, Derek, will you come back where we just do a nostalgia show where we could talk about, would that be cool? Great. Get you and Super Kev rolling on some of that stuff. That would be amazing.
And stuff, years and games.
Yeah.
We could do that for hours, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just been absolutely wonderful. We're going to let you go. And
thanks for your time.
Just been amazing.
Appreciate you.
Seriously, guys, thank you for having me. It's been most enjoyable. And it's felt just like a wonderful chat with a couple of friends in a pub.
Oh, I love that. Brilliant stuff. Derek Ray, everybody, legendary commentator. He will come back. We'll do a trip down memory lane with him for sure. Awesome stuff. Stay safe, be well, and lots of love to you, Derek. And we look forward to our next conversation about the beautiful game.
Thanks, Derek. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, guys. That was great fun, as I said.
You.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so you got Stevie coming on Thursday, yeah?
Yeah, we're still live, actually. We're still live right now. But hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. We're going to listen, you guys. I was just going to do one thing and I wanted to save Derek from it, but I'll do it real quick and then we'll pop off. Football prizes, Freddie Lundberg, signed and custom framed shirt. Go get your ticket today. An amazing legend again. They just keep on coming. So make sure you go over to our friends at footballprizes.co.uk. Squaddies and everyone in the house. Kev and I will be back tomorrow night live with Adam Cattrall, the award-winning broadcaster. We're finally going to put this conversation to bed. Shearer or Thierry Henry? He can't wait to talk to Super Kev about it. I think I know where Super Kev's loyalties lie. Kev,
Just
why
a
don't you
little.
take us out?
Just a little. Anyway, squaddies, listen, hit the like button for this absolute legend, Derek Ray. You get him on your TVs, you get him on your FIFA, now you're getting him on the Highbury squad. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks for coming on, Derek. Give it up for Sophie as well, guys. And listen, you know we love you, and we'll see you tomorrow. At ease, squaddies. At ease.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.